SAS.js is a bit of a Swiss Army knife when it comes to both DevOps and building apps on SAS. In fact, you can build and deploy a web app without even a web server. And I'm going to show you how using this Mario game that we've just recently pushed to GitHub. So if you go to github.com/sasjs/Mario and click this green button, and then from your terminal type git clone the command, and that will pull the repository locally, and then you can just change into that folder and run a npm install command, or npmi for short, that installs the dependencies, and then you can run a SAS.js auth, which will look at the default target, in this case Viya, and ask you to authenticate against it. So the first thing you'll provide is the URL of your Viya server, and then a client ID. To get your client ID, you can use this app. It's another open source SAS.js app we've put on GitHub that lets you easily generate a client and a secret. And once you've done that, you can click the link to get your authorization code, and now the CLI is authenticated, and you can run SAS.js CBD to do a compile and a build and a deploy. Now, whilst that deploys, to explain a bit about this repository, any SAS.js app that you look at anywhere, the first thing you might want to look at is the SAS.js config file, because this describes how the project is built and deployed. So we've been looking at the Viya target, and a target is something that describes the SAS server that you're connecting to. So in this case, it's a SAS Viya server. It's this URL. The app's going to be deployed to this folder in SAS drive, and deploy service pack true. We're going to automatically deploy the services and the files to SAS drive. And finally, this setting here, stream web true. So this is telling SAS.js, when it does the compilation, to actually compile the front end as well as the back end. So the front end here is in the source folder. You can see that, and this contains the raw app. So we've got index.html, we've got some images, we've got sounds, a whole bunch of JavaScript, and a CSS file. And the compilation process in this case is just going to mainly just move them to this folder, untouched, because you can actually load raw files onto SAS drive, except for this click me, which has been updated. So where there's been a local reference to a JS file or a CSS file, that's been updated by the CLI to point to the location in SAS drive. So that's built and it's deployed, and I can click that link to open it in the browser. So there was no web server here. I've just gone straight to SAS drive. You can see the path here. Also notice that this path hasn't changed to UUID. It's a user-friendly path. And I can play my Mario game now. Very good at this. Just go till I die. Okay. That's Viya. What about SAS 9? Because there are many users still on SAS 9. So let's take a look at that process. So I've got the repository still. I need to authorize against the SAS 9 target. I don't have a client secret for this one though, so I'll come on to that. So first of all, I do the URL of the SAS 9 server. Okay, and then a username. This is my SAS username, and a SAS password. Now I can put a plain text password in there, but I don't recommend it. Much better to use an encoded password. In order to use an encoded password in this way, there is a server-side change you need to make those. So that's now done. I can do my SAS.js CBD for the SAS 9 target. And let's go into the SAS.js config and take a look at that target. So it's got my server URL now. It's a SAS 9 server type. This is the location in metadata where the files will be deployed. And you might be thinking, how do I deploy a file to a metadata folder? And metadata doesn't work the same as SAS drive. The compilation process is a bit different here. So instead of these files being deployed as files, actually all this content is deployed as stored processes. And where a file might have binary content, then the file is base64 encoded, and then decoded when it's sent back with the right content header. So when you actually retrieve it from metadata, you do get the actual file that you requested, but it's stored in text format. And that's how we've got sounds encoded into SAS, as well as images. And then, yeah, you see the same things happening here with the index HTML has been modified and streamed out with the right references by the CLI. So again, there was no deployment to a web server. And here's the Mario game on SAS 9. Hopefully, you guys will be much better at Mario than me. Do have a go at deploying it. If you've got any issues, raise an issue, or get in touch with the SASjs team. We'd be happy to help you get this up and running. Thank you.